Afghan President Hamid Karzai is in Washington as part of a 4-day visit. And fresh off a round of publicly scorning Mr. Karzai, the Obama administration has launched a charm offensive with their only official ally in the hotter of our two wars.
I offer a very warm welcome to President Karzai and the members of the Afghan government gathered here. It is a special pleasure to host you and your distinguished delegation in Washington for what is truly an historic gathering this week.
Wow, it doesn't feel like that long ago that the U.S. government was dismissing Karzai after he made a series of statements dismissing the United States and threatening to join the Taliban. It's because it wasn't that long ago, like about a month. Remember?
Is Karzai our ally?
Karzai is the democratically elected leader of Afghanistan.
Following up on Jake, is he a credible partner to the U.S.?
Again, he is the democratically elected leader of Afghanistan.
So that's patched up, and the administration has now publicly embraced Karzai and his government, despite appearances that the folks nominally running Afghanistan remain as corrupt as ever. Whether or not the Obama administration and President Karzai say nice things about each other, the United States' fortunes in Afghanistan remain tied to the Karzai government. Nearly 9 years into the war there have been over 1,000 American casualties, and the U.S. has given more than $51 billion. President Obama has established a July 2011 deadline to bring some troops home, and the sum is a fresh sense of urgency to get something done. Amid that mood, there comes a new report today from the Center for American Progress. Its suggestion is that there is no plan for the Afghan government to decrease its dependence on foreign aid and emerge as a self-sustaining nation. Consider this. Quote, the Afghan government remains heavily reliant on international support for almost 80% of its budget. This major reliance on international aid means the Afghan government's key constituency is the international donor community, not its populace. The Afghan state's long-term survival requires the generation of domestic revenues and a reduction of dependence on foreign aid. The problem isn't that American taxpayers are investing in what continues to be a desperately poor country. That is an absolute moral duty. The problem is that we seem to be creating a situation in which Afghanistan is turned into a ward of the American state in perpetuity. Joining me now is Brian Katulis, Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress. Brian, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Chris.
So, Brian, according to the report your think tank put out today, we seem to be creating a situation that doesn't really advance either the well-being of the Afghan populace or U.S. interests. And this one line in the report really brought me up. It says, Afghans continue to act as bystanders as their state is rebuilt. How did we get to this state?
Well, I think a big part of it is the path that was carved out by the previous administration. And as you know, this was the forgotten war for so many years. We unnecessarily went into Iraq, and I think we were distracted. So now we're playing catch-up. And in the process of playing catch-up, I don't think we have a clear long-term plan of what the end state is. My colleagues Caroline Wadhams and Colin Cookman in this report, I think, lay out the extreme challenges that exist for helping build Afghan institutions, which I think everybody admits is central to the strategy in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, you hear this conversation about building stronger institutions and cracking down on corruption, and it begins to feel a little despair-inducing. I mean, is there a path forward for doing that when so much of the current strategy seems to rely on keeping Karzai as a partner?
Well, I think we've been fixated on Karzai, and what I've seen in visits to Afghanistan is you've got a lot of good people who want just the basic things that you and I have, security, economic development, and there are a lot of people we can work with. Karzai, I think, it's a real stickler here. I mean, as you mentioned, it's been a rocky relationship, and just a few weeks ago, he was threatening to join the Taliban, the guys that we were trying to fight. So managing that relationship, but then trying to not put all of our eggs in the Karzai basket, I think, is part of the strategy here, and to develop institutions at multiple levels, not just at the national government, but in the district and the provinces, too.
President Karzai is in town, of course, this week, and he's going to be here for a while. I'm wondering what are those meetings? I mean, if you're a fly on the wall in those meetings, what are the conversations you think are happening here? What does Karzai want to see coming out of this meeting? What does the White House want to see coming out of it?
Well, I hope from the U.S. perspective there's some tough talk behind closed doors, because as we've seen in public and we'll see in public, there's going to be, this is the kiss and make up mode after the last couple of weeks of difficult talk in public. I hope that the the United States and the Obama administration is pretty clear about cracking down on corruption and strengthening governance, because it's a self-defeating proposition if we're going to be sending troops and U.S. taxpayer money over there and our partner is not as serious about strengthening his own government. So from the Karzai end, I think he's looking for an enduring strategic relationship, and I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. and Afghanistan announce a dialogue similar to what we've seen with Pakistan, a long-term strategic dialogue that sends a signal that even if our troops are starting to leave next summer, we're going to be there for the long haul, and we're trying to build a partnership here.
Do you think the fact that we are seeing a level of violence in Afghanistan and continued news reports about civilian casualties undermines essentially the independence of Karzai, makes it more difficult for him to really stand up?
Well, look, I think you go back to that 80% figure. 80% of his funds and his government come from us and the international community. I think that makes it very difficult for him to stand up on his own. I think one pathway forward we need to talk more about is how can Afghanistan use its own natural resources to basically develop its own economy and its own system there. And then second, we have issues like this offensive in Kandahar, the second largest city in Kandahar. There's some questions about whether the United States and Afghanistan are in full agreement about whether or how to proceed in Kandahar, and I think this will be discussed, and I think we really need to listen to our Afghan partner here in terms of how do we move forward.
Brian Katulis from the Center for American Progress, thanks for being here.
Great, thank you.